Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You're all very welcome to our latest webinar from the European Parliament. It's really an information session about children's online gaming. And I suppose the many issues that come up with that in today's world. I suppose post-COVID, where people were locked up in their houses for a number of months, and indeed the impact of ever-increasing level of gaming going on, particularly among young people. So I suppose the European Parliament has done a long-term European video game strategy, which looked at things like loot boxes, appropriate content, addiction nature, and also looked at the opportunities that there is in terms of the industry as well. So today I'm joined by three speakers which have an in-depth knowledge in the area. We've Aileen Hickie, who's the CEO of Parentline, who's a national helpline for parents in relation to all issues, but also gaming is a big thing, and I think she's seen an increase of 20% in calls for gaming last year. We've McGarrigle from Webwise, which is the Department of Education initiative to encourage online safety initiative for children. It's also co-funded by the EU Commission. And we've Fahey from the Irish Game Makers Association to give an industry context in relation to what we're talking about here today. So essentially, I'd say to everyone, if you can, we're going to have, each of the speakers is going to chat for about 5 minutes and just give an overview from their own perspective. And then we'll open it up to a question and answer session. So I'd ask everyone in the audience, if you have questions, put them into the chat, and I'll get the chance to put them to our three speakers later on. So without any further ado, we'll cut straight to it, and I'll go to Aileen first to give us a perspective from Parentline and what you've experienced in your engagement with parents.
Thank you very much, Colm. First of all, as Colm said, I'm Aileen Hickie. I'm the CEO of Parentline. Parentline is a national helpline that offers information and support and guidance to parents of children of all ages and on all issues. We take about 6,000 calls a year. We have an excellent website, parentline.ie, and we have 50 experienced volunteers, and there's no issue on which they can't offer guidance and which they haven't heard before. So I suppose, first of all, I'm delighted to be part of the webinar today, and thank you very much to Colm for inviting me to be a participant today, particularly because the issues we are discussing are so relevant and they're so concerning to parents. And as Colm mentioned, we've had an almost 20% increase in helpline calls on this particular area, which covers online gaming, internet safety, screen time, internet addiction, internet access, and basically parents worried about their children being online for too long, for too many periods of time, and concerned about what they're actually doing while they're online. The majority of the calls we get, interestingly enough, are in relation to boys, and the age profile would be about 9 to about 16 years of age. They're the main calls of concern. There are calls of concern about all ages and both genders, but that would be where the majority of the calls in relation to this area that we find we're taking. Now, I suppose the first thing I want to say is that online gaming can be fun, it can be sociable, and above all, it gives a level of connectivity to children, which was particularly important actually during the COVID years when a lot of children felt very isolated. They didn't have their social activities or their school friends. So there were a lot of children felt very lonely and very isolated, and it was fantastic that they had a level of connectivity at that time, and continues. The other benefits of online gaming are that it can help children to develop skills like problem solving and teamwork. But aligned to that, there are also many potential risks associated with online gaming. The parents who ring Parentline are concerned about their children being exposed to inappropriate content. They worry about cyberbullying. They're concerned because they know that not everyone online is who they say they are. And I suppose one of the biggest issues is their fear that their child or children are not keeping their personal details private. So these are very real concerns, and I suppose again, perhaps the biggest worry for parents is that the very same connectivity that is a benefit of online gaming, if taken to the limit, can actually mean isolation for children, and that's a very big concern. So there are lots of parents out there who are struggling to get their children to leave their rooms, not mind their homes, to connect with real people and real friends. This might be over the weekend or after school or in the evenings. Our volunteers have listened to parents who are upset because that their young children, and sometimes they're very young children, are online for up to 7 or 8 hours a day. Parents struggle to deal with this, because a lot of parents find that if they try and take the device away, it causes conflict. There can be anger, there can be aggression, and it can lead to further family difficulties. So, look, parents struggle with many issues in relation to their children, but this is just another one of those areas. So I suppose the important thing for all parents is to understand, first of all, the dangers of online gaming. It's not an area that you can just stick your head in the sand and say, I know nothing about it, so, let them belt away. Parents have to understand the dangers that are there, and to understand that there are risks and there are rewards, but they have to assess both levels. So it's up to parents, ultimately, like everything, to familiarise themselves with the games that their children are playing, to treat them as they would any sport or game, whether it's physical or online. No parent is going to start their child, swimming without the appropriate lessons. You're not going to just fire your child into the pool without the appropriate lessons and without the appropriate guidance and without the appropriate equipment, whether it's goggles or swim wings or whatever it is. Similarly, if your child is playing hurling or any, or whatever sport, you're not going to let them out without the appropriate headgear. And online gaming has to be treated with the same precautions. So, again, as I say, ultimately it is up to the parent. You might need to look for information on the content of the games. You might need to look for what in-game purchase policies are there. You need to know the target age group of the games. Now, I suppose on the other side of it, it is also up to those who create video games and those who devise and license them to take into account the age and the rights and the vulnerabilities of children. So I suppose what I'm coming to is that, above all, player safety has to be prioritised, and to do that requires a robust set of parental controls, which are there with most games, but you have to be aware of what parental controls are there, because you can't use something that you know nothing about. To be aware of the game contents, to be aware of the themes of the games, and again, I suppose ultimately it's very important for parents to talk and to teach and to guide. Again, as with all parenting, because talking to a child about what games they are on will ensure that if anything does go wrong in the game or in the gaming, that the child will discuss it and that they will talk to the parent or to a trusted adult. And talking also helps the child to navigate any risks, because the child also has to be aware of the risks and be able to navigate them. So communication is vital. And remember, there are plenty of things that you as a parent can do practically to keep your child safe online and on whatever platforms and devices that they use. You just have to know what they are and talk to your child. As I said already, we have a very good website, parentline.ie. The Parentline helplines are open from 10 in the morning until 9 in the evening from Monday to Thursday, and 10 in the morning until 7 in the afternoon on a Friday. The number is 0187 33500. Now, I'm now going to pass you back to Colm, and he will introduce you to the other speakers who will offer more information on this issue. But thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Aileen. And I think you've just touched on, I suppose, look, me as a parent, I'm conscious of the fact that you don't necessarily know the best ways to approach this, and the tricks and tools that are available, or hints that you can get. And I think that's what today is about, a little bit of a conversation about what we can achieve.
It's about the awareness, because, awareness is everything. So you have to be aware of what's there and then use it.
Yeah, signpost people to different things they can do, and maybe experiences people have from the past. But Jane McGarrigle, Jane is from Webwise, who is a partner of Education Initiative, which is all about this, giving people the tricks and the tools to be able to manage children online, because it is daunting for any parent like myself. You get a child, when a child is born, you're handed a child and everyone's a parent, but all these things come along and you have to learn how to deal with them, and to have a Webwise to deal with them is great. So maybe just a little bit about Webwise.
That's right, Colm. Thank you for having us here today. We're really delighted to be here to talk about this topic. It's an important topic. By way of introduction, my name is Jane McGarrigle. I'm the Project Officer with Webwise, and we are the Irish Internet Safety Awareness Centre. So we promote safer, better internet use among children and young people. And our mission is all about empowering young people to become safe ethical, responsible users of the internet. And part of that is also empowering parents as well, because parents have an important role to play. Our work involves creating education resources for schools to use as well. So there's lots of information available to schools and programs that they can look at. And we've developed a whole hub for parents, the Webwise Parents Hub. There's practical advice on that, expert advice videos, practical how-to guides. We have a parent's guide to a better internet, talking point, and explainer guides to popular apps as well. So that's a great starting point for parents. But in terms of what does research tell us in Ireland, what are children doing online in relation to gaming? One of the most recent comprehensive surveys on online safety of children undertaken by the National Advisory Council for Online Safety in 2021 found that gaming is the 4th most popular activity online. So it's a really popular activity for children aged 9 to 17. And this is after watching video clips, listening to music and communicating with friends and family. Those are the most popular. Further surveys, a recent report by CyberSafe Kids found that 81% of children aged 8 to 12 are playing at least one game online. And what are the most popular games? This will come as no surprise to you. These names are familiar: Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite and FIFA. And I'm sure the audience will recognise those games as well. And in terms of what's gaming culture like? What are kids doing during gaming? They're playing together, but we're also seeing this blurring of boundaries between gaming and social media. You know, there's a lot of interaction, communication, talking. A popular part of online gaming, again, I'm sure parents who are tuning in are familiar with this, watching videos of other gamers, watching live streams, so watching gamers play games that they're interested in, and so they'll be doing this because they might like that gamer, they're a famous YouTuber, or they're trying to find out more about the game, more tips or tricks. Trading virtual items, again, this is a kind of commonplace thing in gaming. Aileen alluded to some of the benefits of gaming, and there are huge benefits, and Webwise is essentially, you know, a core part of our message. We really believe in the benefits of the online world, and it's important that we acknowledge them as well as understand the risks. So gaming can be hugely fun, entertaining for children, relaxing. It can also be an escape for other things that are going on as well, and it's important to recognise that. Be creative, to socialise, help them develop creativity, nurture relationships, improve strategic thinking, problem solving. So there's lots of benefits here, but we know equally risks around commercial pressures, contact with strangers, inappropriate content, bullying, and I think the number one that parents will talk to us about is that issue around spending too much time online. And I think, you know, maybe we'll tease that out maybe throughout the discussion. But I suppose I might kind of, kick off with, okay, so I've signed up to this webinar. What are some of the key things I can think about as a parent? First of all, we recognise all families are different. All families use technology in different ways. Some families might be very tech-rich, and other families mightn't be so involved with technology, and that's all fine. It's whatever works for your individual family. Some things to consider: supervision, particularly for parents of younger children, agreeing rules on times when you're going online. You know, have gaming or these online activities in a supervised family area where you're not too far away if something happens. Protecting privacy online. So giving children that message, not everyone is who they say they are online, you know, reinforcing that message, not to give out personal details that might identify you or your location. Parental controls are a real support as well, particularly for younger children. All apps, games have safety centres, parental controls. They're easy to use and easy to find. We also have links to all the relevant gaming apps and controls on our website, and the information will be given out about that. So also not responding to unwanted contact online, and to tell you if that happens. agree strategies on switching off, so kind of have rules and boundaries in place and consequences to that. Talking regularly, that's the number one thing that we say. Keeping involved, keep interested in what they're doing, checking in with them, and I suppose building...
part of their game in life, if you like.
Exactly, join in. Yeah. Those games are loads of fun as well, and children actually love showing how they work as well. Yeah. So to build that relationship as well.
And to do that, it's kind of, I think it's important that those games, especially for young children, are played in an open space.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly, you know, so it helps just build up the relationship with this idea if something goes wrong. And look, we have to recognise things will go wrong or might go wrong, you know.
If they feel comfortable coming to a parent and they feel like the parent is their friend in relation to the games.
And that the parent gets it, that they're not judgmental or critical of what they're doing, that, you know, because we work with teenagers and they've told us things, bugbears, if you like, about what bothers them, about, you know, if they think their parents don't understand or don't get their world, you know.
Or that they might be blamed for, you know, something that they did while gaming that they didn't actually mean to do.
Exactly, you know, and it can be easy to encounter these things. So.
But if there's a lack of understanding, if it's a distant world to a parent, then there becomes a gap.
Yeah.
And it's about building that relationship, that we're all in this together.
Absolutely, and actually research says there is a gap, and that, you know, that's something that we're keen to look at, and this, you know, we can close that gap by understanding each other's worlds better, you know.
Yeah, I think that's very important.
Yeah.
We might move on to Paul. Paul Fahey is from the Irish Game Makers Association. I suppose, Paul, as we pointed out from Jane, there's a lot of good upsides to gaming, and also then there's an industry that's behind it. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what the industry's doing to make sure children are safe online, and indeed, if you like, a little bit about the industry maybe as well. Paul?
Yes, of course. So yes, as Colm mentioned, I'm a member of the IMERT Irish Game Makers Association, which is a voluntary body representing Irish game makers both nationally and internationally in Ireland. So this is a huge topic in the video game industry, especially as my previous panelists mentioned, ever since the pandemic, where children were left with a lot of time to spend in these games. And it's important to note that many of these games are designed in such a way as to encourage the player to spend as much time in them as possible, to spend as much, oftentimes in free-to-play games, to encourage them to spend real money in order to convert the player into a customer. And these kind of psychological tricks can be very effective on children. So it's important for parents to be able to discern when those marketing tricks and when those kind of spend tricks are being deployed in these kinds of games. There's a vast amount of resources online that will show you how to recognize these elements to a game, especially online games, as well as teach you how to kind of teach your child about them. Because if the earlier a child learns how to spot these things, the easier it will be for them to avoid negative interactions in online games. Within the industry itself, as I said, this is a huge topic, and it is something that the Irish industry especially is taking very seriously. I've been working in online games for 5 years, and the topic of designing ethical game design, as we call it, has always been on the forefront of what we do. So we always try to take into account children will be playing this. It's not enough for us on the industry to assume that the age rating will stop children from playing the game. If we've learned anything from the years and the decades that games have been made, is that children will find a way to play the game. And so we need to design games in a way that is friendly for children, in a way that isn't harmful for their development.
What specific measures are the industry taking in that regard, if you like? Is there anything that you could flag in terms of might be of interest to parents?
I'm actually going to be completely honest with you. I don't think we're doing enough. I can't point to a single initiative that was taken from games because there haven't been any official initiatives. A lot of it comes down to individual designers and their kind of concept of ethical design, and that's simply not good enough. As a games industry, I think we need to be doing more to codify these best practices, these ethical practices, and actually make them a part of official initiatives or even legislature, because right now it is simply down to individual designers and their grasp of ethics.
Actually, Paul, can I just ask you a question there? In terms of age, I mean, I know you said the industry is doing it a lot and the children will always find a way around it, but surely there has to be a better way for an age verification process.
That is actually that has been a hot button topic since the 80s, to be honest. Since the ERGB was first created as a result of the violence and the violent video games that came out in the 80s, like Mortal Kombat and such like that. The truth of the matter is that age verification is always going to be almost like an honor system, because it comes down to selling the game, right? The initial idea of age verification was that game stores would not sell the game to anyone who appeared to be under that age.
And is there no official rating, like a PEGI rating that would that indicates, and is there no standards that's set for games? Like surely parents can be guided by the standards that's on the game, or is that not?
There is technically a PEGI system that does enforce a minimum age requirement for games, but the problem is one of enforcement. Back in the physical games era of the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, it was possible for game stores to not sell games to children below a certain age. In a digital age, that's not as easy, because what is to stop someone from simply using their parents' identification to purchase a game online? It's very, very hard to enforce age ratings, which is why I think the solution is as always within the industry to better understand how to ethically design games with children in mind, and to teach parents how to teach their children about games, and how to better discern whether a game is going to be impactful to their child. Because in a digital age where games are sold digitally, where there is no middleman, it is going to be very, very hard to stop a child from playing a game that's inappropriate for them. Absolutely,
and I suppose in that whole area of, let's say, supports or apps that people can use, is there things, and maybe I'll come to Jane and come back to Paul then after that, is there things in terms of apps and supports that are there for parents?
Yeah, absolutely. I might just tail off on what Paul was saying there in terms of what can be done, in the here and now. If I'm a parent, in terms of age ratings, what actually can I do? The PEGI system is actually a very good system, so absolutely parents should check the PEGI age rating on that. It's a good system.
It's reliable.
It's a good guide, so it's a good starting point. But yes, we know children want to play games, young children want to play games as they're 18, and do have violent inappropriate content.
Big brother, the older cousin sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
In their friend's house.
Yeah, so, but what can we do? Well, look, we would say just, get informed. There's actually loads of information about all these types of games, not only on our website, but many other websites. So have a look yourself and see, look, am I comfortable with my child playing this? Can they connect with other people? What are the privacy settings? What tools can I arm myself with it and make an informed decision?
And they can go online to your website. Absolutely. There's plenty of information there.
There's a whole range of explainer guides, Among Us, Fortnite, all the most Roblox, all the most popular.
And you can put settings in. What settings can you put in there?
So as I said, all these games do have their own settings, privacy settings, all that. Yeah. Have a look at them and have a look with the explainer guides. These are written in plain English and actually just kind of bullet point everything that a parent or guardian might need to know about that. So I think it's really important to kind of...
Because where the glitch seems to be is between the available set of parental controls and then the information piece about knowing what controls are there and learning how to use them, because rather than just saying, well, listen, I don't know what they're up to, you actually have to be informed.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's back to the point about the conversation that you should be constantly having with your children in relation to their gaming experience. Just a reminder to the people online to be sure to bring questions. I know there was a question in from, I think it's Veronica, about is it been recorded and will it be available afterwards? It will. We will be putting it up in due course. It might be a day or so before we put it up, but it will be available online. But getting back to some of the more straightforward questions, I suppose, in terms of children and the amount of time, and I think Paul touched on it in terms of during COVID, people spend a lot of time online. So if a parent's kind of worried about, is my child spending too much time online? Is there any sort of indicative guide for that?
Look, honestly, we all want a number, don't we? We want a number, but unfortunately, there isn't a magic number.
And it depends on an age as well, doesn't it? I mean, because obviously screen time is age appropriate.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think the COVID thing, I think parents gave themselves a wild hard time about how much time their children were spending online, but it was in the absence of all other activities gone, you know. So, but look, I suppose the thing that we need to think about as well, we'd really encourage this, is looking at it not just from a time but a quality point of view, and kind of this idea of getting a healthy balance of online and offline activities. You know, your child will be doing activities online for homework and stuff like that, you know, as well as entertaining. So kind of, if I'm spending hours and hours on end looking at cat videos on YouTube, that's not a great way to spend your time. You're not going to be feeling great after that. So it's looking at this idea of, okay, so what is my child doing online? What activities are they enjoying doing online? What's useful to them? Getting an understanding of that, you know, and agreeing a clear set of rules around that then. So kind of times, you know.
Giving them the time limits. But I think also, I suppose you have to look at the overall child. Is that all they're doing? You know, are they doing other, you know, extracurricular activities? Are they meeting their friends?
Is it mixing in with is it part of a lifestyle?
Yeah. Or has it just become, you know, online gaming, that's it?
And if you've a concern, because it's one thing, if you've a concern your child is spending too much time online and you'd like to see them out playing sport or mixing with their friends, is there any particular ways you can approach getting them to be more involved, getting them to switch off in terms of their game?
So in terms of switching off, and look, I think we all know this kind of familiar row at the end of the day, you know, time to switch off, and there can be a lot of tension around that. It's having an understanding and your child understanding what the routine is, what the rules are around this. We have a family agreement on our website that's actually a really great starting point where you can sit down together, talk through the activities, agree timelines, agree rules around that, enforce the rules as well to ensure that there is an understanding that there is consequences.
I think that's really important. I think you could go the dramatic route, which is, that's it. You're not getting your device. It's, you know, stick it in a drawer and you won't see it for a week, which doesn't work, and parents won't stick to that. So it's better to have a set, controlled screen
It's about, if you like, agreeing your terms with your child.
And involving them.
And involving them, and then they're a party to that, so they can have no arguments with it, if you like, in the long run. No, I think that is important. Just a couple of questions are coming in online. I see links, Jacqueline here has asked about links to Revolut and this whole idea. I suppose it brings up the whole loot box area. I know maybe I'll come to Paul view on this one, because I suppose from an industry perspective, like the idea of loot boxes and buying, and like you hear these horror stories of maybe someone getting their hands on a credit card and racking up a €1,000 bill over a weekend or that. How real is this, and what should parents be, or how should parents be approaching this?
Oh, it's quite real. It's definitely a real fear. It's not something to underestimate. A lot of times, games that so a lot of games are designed in such a way as to attempt to convert the player, right? To turn from a player into a paying customer. And they some games utilize a lot of very unethical psychological tricks to do this. They use what's called FOMO, or fear of missing out. They utilize social pressure among online friends in order to convince someone, literally peer pressure someone into spending. And then there comes to loot boxes, which is essentially a form of gambling, as was, you know, determined by the European Commission.
Government,
the Belgian government. But and when you use that with some very, very nice graphics, like for example a very satisfying sound when the box is opened, or a nice pop of color, that can, you know, trigger a certain section of the brain. It can release the endorphins. It feels good. It's a good feeling when that box opens. And when the brain starts to associate that good feeling with spending money, you can see where the danger lies immediately. It's almost like a Skinner box. It's teaching a cognitive reaction to the player. And I think when you start...
Ways can go beyond gaming in that child's experience in the longer term. They can associate good feelings with spending money when, do you know what I mean? Which is something that can translate into life in general.
Which is also gambling.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's very dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we realise that, you know, one, as an industry, and two, as, you know, as adults, that this is a very, very dangerous thing for children to a very dangerous association for children to make so early in life, especially when they're not seeing the direct consequences of how that can go wrong. They're only seeing the feel good, makes me happy feeling. They're not seeing the bank account going lower and lower and lower and lower. Yeah. So I think it is important for that to be part of education, a part of a child's understanding of video games, and that they know that this is a danger that they need to consider.
Very good. And Aileen, from Parentline's perspective, have you heard much about, let's say, loot boxes? It seems to be the conversation at the moment and the concern parents have.
Yeah, we have, and we have taken calls from those parents who, you know, I mean, you know, you could say maybe it was lack of foresight that, you know, would allow a parent to give a child a credit card and, you know, and cause merry hell. But, you know, I suppose maybe there's a trust thing for some parents, and they felt it was okay to give a credit card number for a certain thing. They didn't realise what was being racked up. But we have taken calls from parents where it has been, you know, €500 or $1,000 spent on loot boxes, and essentially, you know, with the loot box, you know, the child doesn't know what they're getting. The parent has no understanding of the loot box, and you know, there's certainly, as the Belgian government has decided, you know, there is certainly a link with gambling.
Yeah. So the question coming in here, and I think it's interesting, it's about, like, and you hear people saying this, where they ban, let's say, gaming in the house till a child is 12 or 14 years old, and this person's Una's talking about hard copy games. In other words, things like your old Monopolies or whatever that are physical versus online. Is that the way to go, or is that considered to be good practice, or does that create a greater desire almost in the long run?
I think so, yeah, and this can be often the solution. Okay, you know what, we're going to ban this, you know, out of the house completely. And I suppose there's lots of reasons why maybe it's not really regarded as, you know, the most helpful solution in terms of that. There's worries then about, and we talked about trying to bridge this gap between children telling and, you know, parents understanding. There would be a worry if we ban things that it would push things underground.
Yeah. But it always has. I mean, that's how things work. Yeah. And actually, what you know, again, what parents need to remember is you might attempt to ban something in your own house or device.
This is the key thing, and then they go down
the road. They have their friends, absolutely.
So, and they come home then, and they want to be on the friends playing it, and they want it all the more because they can't get it.
You're totally blindsided then, because again, you haven't opened the conversation. You've tried to close down a conversation that is still going on, but it's now going on in somebody else's house, and you haven't taught them how to navigate the risks, because you've just told them there will be no risks because you're not doing it. So, you know, it doesn't work.
But I do think in terms of the question, you know, in terms of ages, okay, like that, you know, it's definitely important to consider what age you would like your child to be gaming, and you know, it's not, you know, it may not meet the child's expectations, but you can meet in the middle in terms of that. Okay, I don't think you're ready now. We will relook at this, you know, and use your family contract as well.
Well, it could be a negotiation. I mean, again, like, so the gaming can be a negotiation, the device can be a negotiation. Yeah. The amount of time they spend on the device can be a negotiation, but at least that opens a conversation rather than actually just putting your head in the sand.
Absolutely. Question just come in about workshops, and you mentioned that you work with young people as well as parents. So is there workshops about younger people, say, for acting online? Or?
Yeah, so look, we have a whole range of resources, right from first class up until senior cycle for schools to avail of, and they're for free. We also do an annual, and it's a fabulous programme, an annual training programme. So in Ireland, we coordinate Safer Internet Day. It's a global initiative. It began as an EU initiative, and it's celebrated every February, and it's a great time for parents, schools, businesses, organisations, the likes of ourselves to talk about this, to have a chat. So we do a peer-led training programme where we recruit 100 post-primary students each year to be trained up in leadership, online safety, to go back into their own schools or communities and do a campaign for Safer Internet Day. So as part of that, the peer-led training bit, we have a youth panel who train them up. So they're not learning from us, they're learning from their own peers, and then they pass that on to their school. And so this year the theme was all about online bullying, and last year the theme was all about helping parents, and they actually, out of that training programme, we created a resource, a talking points guide written by the teens themselves to help parents, and again, that's on our website as well.
And just when you talk about, let's say, online bullying, which has become a big issue in the last 10 years, as much in social media as it is in the like of this, is it a thing, and I suppose there's two questions in this. There's one about online bullying, but there's also about the people that children are interacting with online, and I might come to you as well on this, Paul. But in terms of how people should manage that, because they could be talking to anybody, number one, and then you don't know what pressure children are being putting on. Oh, God forbid, your child might be putting pressure on some other children as well.
Yeah, so look, I suppose in terms of the negative experiences children encounter online, that research I talked about at the beginning, having nasty messages or online bullying are the most common reported negative experiences Irish children and teens experience. So it is something we do a lot of work around, and I suppose there are things around teaching and supporting children, and schools do brilliant work in this area as well. You know, they do brilliant work. Giving the messages about what to do if something happens online, block, report, to tell, that reinforcing message of to tell and to get
block,
support.
report and tell.
Yeah, absolutely. But then there's also, we need to teach our children to be kind online and not to engage in that type of behaviour as well.
Yeah. The way you would act in everyday life is the same way you should act online.
It's kind of going back to that old, I suppose it's kind of going back to that old thing, you know, of, if there's, unless it's something that you would write up on the child's front door, then don't put that negative message online and hope that
if you wouldn't say it ordinarily, don't say it online.
Absolutely, that's it. So if you're not going to say it straight out to the face of the child or write it down, you know, and hand it to the child, then don't do it online. And we would take calls on this, and again, it would principally involve around negative messaging to the child, or negative comments that might be made online to a forum about a particular child, and it is very, very upsetting for a parent, obviously, very disturbing for children. It's actually forming part of, the government has an action plan on anti-bullying, which is being rolled out in schools. Absolutely, because it is a huge part of it, and you know, it's very concerning for parents, because you know, it just means, it also means that online bullying can take place 24 hours a day.
Absolutely,
you're not
it's not just in the playground, it's on the school grounds, it's late at night, and it can be...
And it actually is often late at night.
Absolutely. Paul, just from an industry's perspective, like this whole idea of the anonymous people that children may be playing with online, for instance, and that whole idea of bullying, is there anything that could be done in terms of an approach from the industry that would manage that situation effectively?
Yes, I think there is, and I think there's actually some really good initiatives already ongoing. So one thing, the biggest kind of the scariest sort of aspect is the idea of your child talking to someone that they don't know, right? So someone that could be a bad actor. So what a lot of games have recently started doing is actually obfuscating the chat function a little bit and making it so that you can't type your own messages into the chat. You can only send predefined like selection of messages that the game gives you. So you can't write your own messages. You never actually directly interface with the other person. It's all kind of just like pre-written messages that the game has given you. They do that in the Pokemon games, for example. You can only send like, hello, let's catch this Pokemon. Hello, let's battle. You can't actually write the messages themselves, so you're immediately taking away the ability for any dangerous interactions within the game. And as well as that, you know, there's no way to put in personal information. There's no way to give any details. It's just the pre-written messages that the game is given. Blizzard, in their game Overwatch, has a rather sophisticated algorithm within their chat that detects bullying, that detects toxicity, as we call it in the industry, and automatically changes it to a different message. The person that sent it, the person who sent the toxic message, is told that their message didn't go through, and the person receiving it just gets an automatic message from Blizzard telling them that you might want to like block this person. So there's different companies are kind of coming up with very...
And that type of technology could be built into a lot of games. Absolutely,
it definitely could. It's been shown to work in like a number of examples of games. I believe that Riot are implementing something similar into League of Legends, where you know it's just kind of preset messages that you send, and you can't actually like type into chat. To cut down on toxicity in their game, which was a huge issue for Riot for a long time. It's what caused a lot of players to leave the game. especially considering a lot of young people like to play their game as well.
Just on that, just a comment that comes in here about like purchasing and guidelines around purchasing and loot boxes. And the question has been asked, could there be guidelines and stricter control of games, particularly in relation to loot boxes, where it's much more clear and there's, let's say, criteria, a bit like you'd have in a gambling type situation, where it's quite clearly this is something that needs to be warned, number one, but maybe restricted in terms of who can buy a game that has a loot box on it.
I think there could be. I think there could and should be more safeguards. You know, we see it on gambling sites. You know, if you want to go do the lotto, you have to go through a number of criteria, right? So there's no reason why that criteria shouldn't exist.
And the question is, are the industry willing though? Like, I suppose, to be honest, okay, you can get national guidelines, and there is probably a government responsibility at some level in relation to this. But also, the industry could take an industry initiative to is that possible, or what's your sense?
Absolutely, I believe we should take responsibility for our own industry as well, and that is, you know, it's something that like is a big topic for me personally. It's something that I've been trying to push for myself, but as you know, as with any like large industry, change is slow. Change happens at a snail's crawl, right? I am very hopeful that these changes will start to happen, but at the same time, I do believe that government legislature and actual enforcing of that is also necessary to make that change happen a bit faster.
And just one other thing in relation to that idea of people gaming with someone they don't know. Is there any guidance from the industry or any way that let's say, you could restrictions that it could only be, let's say, your friends, or limitations like that could be put on? What couldn't be done in that area?
So there are friend systems that are available in a lot of games where that you can only talk to people that you have accepted a friend request for, or that you have requested to be your friend. That's very, very prevalent in a lot of games that are directly aimed at children, and that is also present in a lot of parental controls. But by default, I feel like that is a technology that is very easy to implement in games. That, you know, you can't receive a message, you can't send a message unless they're your friend. That exists on the platform Steam, which is the biggest PC platform for games. And it exists on a couple of other platforms as well. So that is already something that's being rolled out.
And is that let's say, list of friends, a bit like social media friends almost, can that list be reviewed to see is there anyone on it that you don't necessarily know, or is that a possibility, or is that unrealistic?
I think it is. I think, like, you know, it's down to a lot of the time people use pseudonyms online, right? So they're not using the real name. So unless if the parent is if you willing to talk and, like, you know, have your child explain to you who these people are, then you'd be able to. But again, it is kind of obfuscated by the fact that people use pseudonyms, they use gamer tags, they don't use their real names. So just having a cursory glance through your child's friend list isn't really going to give you much information.
Yeah, but just a concern here about blocking people, and it can lead to exclusion. Like, it can be a form of bullying in itself, that, let's say, in a group, somebody gets blocked out by the rest of the group. So I suppose this person's saying there's two sides to that as well. I suppose it's blocking maybe people you don't know, as opposed to people within your own group, I think, is the most important thing, probably.
Yeah, definitely. I think that like the key in advice that you generally get in these games, if you get a message from someone you don't know, you'll usually have like a little message pop up underneath saying, like, if you don't know this person, there's the block button is here. So generally the advice is to block people that are trying to contact you that you don't know.
Yeah. And that list of people that are associated with, that have been gaming with, is obvious, so you could see if there was somebody on it as a parent. A parent can see that, can they?
Yeah. There's always that, you know, a lot of these games have recent players that you can actually look through and see who the child has been playing with recently. And again, they do use pseudonyms, but the information is there, and a lot of the time that includes things like country, where they're playing from. So you can see, in fact, that, like, on your friends list, you know, you're from Ireland, you see that your friends list from someone from Germany, or from, you know, from France. You probably know that's someone they probably don't know through school, right? So there is some information that is very useful for parents there on the friends lists, on the recent player lists that a lot of these games have. And it's generally, if parents want to know where to look, on any of these online games, there is always a social tab somewhere in there. And in that social tab, you can see the player names of the people that the player of the game has been playing with.
And Aileen, like, from parents' perspective, like that must be one of the big concerns that parents have, who they're playing with and who they're interacting with, and the issues that come with that. Is that one of the things that comes up in questions?
Absolutely, because again, it's not everyone online is who they say they are, or is the age that they say they are. So, it's a huge concern. I mean, we would take calls from parents who can hear their child, in their bedroom communicating with someone that...
And they haven't a clue who that someone is.
They don't. So, I mean, and going back to a point you made actually earlier, Colm, I mean, certainly isolating someone in any circumstances is a form of bullying, whether that's physical or online.
And it can happen so easy if there's a group of, let's say, 10 people, and suddenly everyone decides, we don't want him involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a form of bullying.
It's the most insidious form of bullying, actually. But I suppose it is drawing a line between, are you blocking those that you really don't know, or are you just blocking because you don't like a person?
But like that, as parents, you can interact among parents to know what someone's son is or daughter is playing.
Well, once again,
if they have a name, you know who that is.
It's the communication thing and the talking and being aware and being informed.
Yeah, and I think you brought up actually a really good point there, Colm. Other parents are a great source of support and information as well, talking to each other about what's going on, what games your child is playing, maybe kind of come into some sort of agreement together about, you know what, we're going to wait till this age, till this, or, social media and things like that.
Have a network among parents as much as your structure within the family life.
Great support there, absolutely,
Oh, but the other side of this, and maybe I'll come to Aileen, you first on this, like, there's a lot of good about games too. There's a lot of developmental aspects to them. So, like, we have to be careful not to be negative about this.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's like everything. There's a huge benefit to online gaming. It's like everything. It is open to abuse, obviously, and it's all about limits. But there are benefits, as I said earlier. Principally, the benefits are the level of connectivity. It can be sociable, and I know, there are parents out there who might say being sociable means actually meeting your friends, but you can be sociable online with friends. There can be elements of problem solving. They can learn, resilience. So there's a lot to be gained from them, as long as, like everything, in moderation, and that includes moderation.
Yeah, but problem solving and let's say digital skills and so many different things you can get from gaming online. And I think a way of thinking of logic, like Jane, they have a positive role to play.
Absolutely, and that's what our organisation is all about, recognising all the benefits. And look, I think it's important also to recognise children and teenagers don't differentiate between online and offline. Online is part of their world. It's simply an extension of their world, and it's important, for us to recognise.
And it's probably important for us not to create that structure ourselves. That they're two separate things.
Yeah.
It's just part of life.
Yeah, exactly.
And what children will often do is they'll bring friends in after school to play, but the play is online. So, you could say they could be in different houses, but they're actually playing online because it is part of their social lives and their connectivity, and it is something that they might have in common with their friends. And obviously it's great to have physical activities and sporting activities. Not all children are very sporty, so as long as there's a balance there.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, not everybody plays sport. And
absolutely,
and it's important, obviously, people who do a lot of gaming, get them out to do other activities as well. Paul, from your perspective, in terms of developing games and what's happening in that space, like, to be fair to a lot of the games, they would get credit for being quite developmental. What's been done in that space to make sure that the positive of gaming is pushed forward?
That's Imert's whole mission, is to represent the games industry at a local and a national level. We just saw recently with the introduction of the new tax credit for games that people are starting to see the real benefit that the games industry has for the development of our country, for the development of creativity, and I think that there is a huge amount of positive imagery now with it for the games industry, especially in regards to children's development and young people's development. One of our big missions as Imert is to do that kind of outreach, is to reach out to young people and teach them both about careers in games and about how games can assist them in their lives. And you can kind of see the way the industry was 10 years ago as this kind of impenetrable obelisk, right, that you couldn't really learn much about, that was kind of just this mysterious thing in the background, has suddenly, well, not suddenly, but over the course of a decade, through a lot of hard work by representatives, has become a lot more public, has become a lot more transparent, and that people are able to kind of get involved with a lot easier now than when I was a child.
Yeah. I think that whole conversation that's happening, a bit like the bullying conversation, but the general conversation that everyone does it together, I think is helping, if you like, maturing the whole debate around.
There has to be a moral imperative between industry, government and parents all working together to keep children safe online, because it won't work otherwise.
It's like a cooperation between everybody to work together.
Yeah.
And one thing in relation, now just to say a question here about like new games and new apps and keeping up to speed, and the children will all know what the new game is, but the parent won't know what. And I see you nodding there, Jane. Is there any way it's just keeping up is a job in itself?
Keeping up is really difficult. The pace of things that move so quickly, it is overwhelming. So, but this is what our job is, to help parents with that. If there's a new game come out, go onto our website, check out the explainer guide.
Information on all the as much as possible.
It's updated on a regular basis. Yeah. If it's not on our website, you'll certainly find it on one of the other brilliant resources that are available for parents online out there. internetmatters.org, Common Sense Media. There's lots. The ISPCC, Childline Digital Hub
all
as
these
well.
People, just give us those names again. All these people have...
It's very good information for parents and explainers. So Webwise Parents Hub, ISPCC Digital Hub. There's also internetmatters.org, which is the UK-based website for parents. There's brilliant information there, and a US one, Common Sense Media. So that's what we would say. You know, try not to feel overwhelmed, because there are organisations and resources out there to help you, and that's the best starting point with that.
How are we meant to keep up?
Well, you know, parenting is a struggle, you know, one way or the other.
A mother of five.
Yes, and you know what we'll always say to parents is, you know, first of all, there's no such thing as the perfect parent. Neither is there such thing as the perfect child. And it's okay just to be a good enough parent, but to be a good enough parent, you do have to stay as informed as you can. And as Jane just said there are plenty of resources there where parents can
go online
can
themselves
and can be aware.
And even apart from that parental conversation among parents, when the new game comes, maybe one of the other parents will know it. What about the industry? Like, this just keeps coming, Paul. So how do they give enough guidance to games? Is there enough guidance in what people have been told?
So the games industry is unbelievably massive. And like you said, it just keeps coming. Last year, 11,000 games were released on Steam alone. That's only Steam on PC. So like there are guidelines on again ethical design and there are now by law in a lot of states in the US where a lot of games come from, there are a certain minimum requirement of elements that you have to put into the game in regards to protection of children, like, you know, disclaimers and, you know, parental controls and chat settings and things like that. But the reality is that it's a worldwide industry with no single rule set, with no single guideline, and it's really, like you said, it has to be a conversation. It has to be a kind of a three-way moral imperative, like the way you said, that moral imperative between the industry, governments, and parents. Because right now it is still a little bit of a Wild West. There isn't enough of a set guideline there.
And is there scope there for, let's say, well, obviously at policy level there could be scope, and government level, but is there scope, let's say, when you consider how international it is, how global it is, even for Ireland to do something or for Europe to do something? There's a challenge to make that reach to, well, I suppose it's more in the retail space, is it, that only games are sold that comply with certain regulations? Is that the scenario you're looking at?
I think for me it's more of a scenario of education and more of a scenario of guidance. So the International Game Developers Association, the IGDA, does a lot of work in this regard to educate developers, to make sure that developers are following best practices, they set up workshops, they hold conventions, they do a lot of work to ensure that developers are maintaining a certain ethical standard. But the reality of the matter is, as in any industry that is, to find by profit, there will always be people who kind of skirt those guidelines. So it comes down to, like you say, retailers holding a certain standard, publishers holding a certain standard. A lot of publishers are very, very good now about maintaining an ethical standard of games they release. And I think that's also very important, and it comes down to legislative standard as well. But there are organisations within the industry, like I said, like the IGDA, like IMERT, who do try and ensure that ethical standards are kept by our colleagues through education and workshops.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jane, from your perspective, like the Webwise and the work that's done, like you offer, let's say, I won't say training, but there are services there that you provide for parents and that. Yeah. Just so people are aware.
So we work with various different organisations, Parentline, to provide training for volunteers and things like that. We are part of a wider organisation, though, called the PDST, Professional Development Service for Teachers. So schools can access in-school support as well. So there's free resources and support there. And one of our partners in the Irish Safer Internet Centre, the National Parents Council, actually provide direct training to parents, so parents can find out more about that on mpc.ie, fabulous resource, and there's a helpline for parents there as well.
I was just going to say, as regards helpline, like at the end of the day, Parentline are there. If people have concerns, pick up the phone.
Absolutely. As I say, we've 50 fantastic, very experienced volunteers. There's nothing they haven't heard before. They'll offer information, they'll give support, they'll give guidance, and they'll also signpost a parent to an organisation like Webwise or wherever they feel it's appropriate, or that they might find the information that they're looking for.
And just one, I'm going to come to all of you for a last comment, more or less, in terms of what a take home for people. We're kind of running out of time here, so I'll probably just go straight to Paul first. In terms of what take home have you for parents, that or reassurances, I suppose, as well, from an industry perspective?
From an industry perspective, from someone who's been working in the industry for 5 years, for someone who is educated in the industry, for someone who works with developers of all different kinds, I think that games can be a beautiful source of creativity. They can be a beautiful source of education. They can teach a child so many things about themselves, the world around them, about relationships, and about how to talk to people and how to live with people, and that can be so beneficial for a child's development and for your relationship with your child. You know, I bonded with my father for years through video games, and I think that it's such a powerful source of bonding that
common purpose almost.
Yes, exactly. And utilizing this as the tool it is, and as the tool for creativity, as the canvas that it is, can be a beautiful thing for your relationship with your child. But it also comes with a certain amount of vigilance that is required. And a conversation that needs to be had as well. And I feel like the theme conversation has come up a lot today, and I think it's the best way to put it. Talking with your child, understanding and learning from them as well, and not just imposing kind of a state of authority. I love how Isabel put it. I think if you do that, video games can be a powerful way for your child to blossom into a wonderful human being.
Brilliant. And Aileen, from your perspective, like, what take home would you have for, like, the conversation obviously is key and people need to converse. Anything in particular you'd like to say to parents?
No, as you said, the talking is key, so keeping the lines of communication open. I suppose teaching your child how to navigate the risks, because they will encounter risks and, you know, and there are dangers, and just to be very aware of the number of parental controls, and you know, just be informed that you can help your child to be safe online or in online gaming, but you have to be aware and informed of what's out there to do that.
Yeah, I think maybe when we're done, we might do a little bit of something to circulate to people in terms of signposting to where you find some of these different things. But Jane, from your perspective, any particular take home you think you'd like to say to?
So yeah, I think look, as I said, I know parents can often feel overwhelmed in this area and they can give themselves a hard time. It's not too late to establish rules, to have that conversation, to start that conversation. Use the resources available. Yeah. There is so much out there. Yeah. Starting off.
It's not an issue if you don't know. Like, you know, there may be other parents who might know a little bit more. Or
talk to other parents.
Just begin where you are and take it from there.
Exactly.
Don't be afraid of it.
Exactly, you know.
Well,
So
I suppose that actually, just on going on something you said there, you know, parents talk to other parents at the school gate about activities their children are doing, whether it's, you know, hurling or sport. So
drama.
this is just another activity, and it's okay to talk to parents and express concerns to the parent if you think, you know, is your child doing this, or what do you think of this game?
The reality is most children are playing games online, and some parents might be almost trying not to admit to it, like,
and
as if it's a bad
that
thing.
you open the door and let them talk about it.
And it's a good thing to take it from that position. And I think more than anything, what we found in the conversation is that conversation, that everything starts with involving all the players, the children, the parents, perhaps on a bigger picture, the industry. And if we could all come together and just,
all
like,
stakeholders,
mature the conversation, make it part of our lives, but don't let it, if you like, overpower our lives either. And I think that getting that balance right is probably...
we have made progress there. You know, we've learned a lot in the last 20 years about the internet, and some key safety messages, you know, they're now embedded in with children and with adults as well. So we are, you know, getting there.
And instead of, I suppose, treating the internet or online gaming as the big bad wolf, you know, to get to know that wolf and, you know, and figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, and just before we finish, there may be parents out there that are finding the whole thing challenging and maybe are in situations where it is a bit difficult. And to bear in mind, you do have Webwise, and Webwise does have a line, a hotline, if you like, and you do have Parentline, and no doubt the industry are there as well, to hear as well. But, like, you can reach out, but I think as much as anything, you can reach out to the people around you too, because there's supports in friends and in people on the same journey as you are that's just as important as anything that's out there. But we will circle it, as I say, afterwards. I think really we might wrap it up at that. I'd just like to say thank you to our three guests. I'll start with Paul because he's online, and thanks for the industry perspective. It was a late call to Paul in the last few days to come on board, and it's been great to have him because it's very important. There's two sides to this story, and I think we've all learned of the good as well as and the developmental potential. I'd like to thank Paul for his part in it, to Aileen from Parentwise, and I think it's so important, apart from just the gaming thing, to have a service like Parentline there, that you're available for any parent and any concern to come forward and just pick up the phone, and we will circulate the contact details for fear people don't have them afterwards.
Because actually sometimes, Colm, what a parent wants is just to listen and you know, just to talk to somebody else and have them, to somebody else and have them listen to them while they express their concerns. Parents, we'll often find parent already knows the answer when they ring us, but they want to talk it through. Absolutely, they want the validation and somebody to listen to them. And I think the great thing about Parentline is that we're entirely confidential. You know, we're an anonymous, confidential service, so it's not like you're telling, you know, your friend something or your sister something. If you want to express something confidentially, Parentline is there.
Perfect. And Jane, similarly with Webwise, like the expertise is there, the workshops are all the different structures, and online is there, and there is the hotline as well. So you're there to help. Absolutely.
Parents can contact us via our website and absolutely pick up the phone to Parentline or get in touch with National Parents Council. Also brilliant listening services there for parents.
So listen, Jane, Aileen, Paul, thank you very much for your contributions. I hope it was of some help to all those online. And as I say, we will circulate information that may be of use when the webinar is over. And thanks again to all three guests, and thanks to you, the audience, for engaging with us. And look, maybe we'll catch up with you in another webinar soon, and I'm sure we'll take up this issue in other ways into the future. I think just a couple of things I would like to finish on. I think the agreement that you talked about the idea of an agreement with your family, I think the idea about the conversation and having that conversation, and I think the idea of maybe pulling all the stakeholders together in a bigger conversation, I think these are the things. I think Aileen mentioned conversation as part of it. I think these are the things we can do. Regulation will only bring us so far, but if people work together, we can create a standard and an understanding of how all this works. And hopefully today was of some benefit to people. And as I say, we'll circulate the information afterwards. And thanks again to our three guests, and thanks to you, the audience.
Thanks, Colm.
Thanks for having me.
Recordings.